Hello, you're listening to Me and Paranormal You with your host, Ryan Singer. Because it's more fun to believe.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening to another experience of Me and Paranormal You. This is your buddy, Ryan Singer. I've got Andrea Land with me here today. What's up, Grooving Goddess?
I am over here grooving. Thank you so much for
Grooving.
having me, Ryan.
Yeah, this is going to be, this
Yeah.
is going to, on a Sunday afternoon, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, only it's
Yeah.
cruising technically, but I like
It's
grooving.
cruising.
Yeah.
Grooving is
Yeah.
better than cruising.
Grooving is better. I don't know what they were thinking.
If you can
I guess it
groove
was the
while you
fascination with
cruise.
cars. Yeah. That's the best of all worlds.
Yeah, it just reminds me of, it's funny how the world changes in such drastic ways. Like apparently, I don't know, 30 years ago, whenever it was, out in the valley in California, like in Van Nuys Boulevard, like cruising down, like when cruising was a thing,
Mm-hmm.
when people would just like, they look forward to the weekend so they can just drive their car down a road to be seen and to see other people and just to be seen.
Yeah, that was definitely a thing. I grew up in California. I didn't move to Colorado until I was about 22, 23. And we still had cruising. I was up north. So it was the El Camino.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because it went from San Francisco all the way down to San Jose. And people would cruise through various areas of it. But by the time I was out of high school, the cruising thing was pretty much over. And then it was funny because I moved to this little town in Colorado, right? And I got here and there wasn't a whole lot to do here 20 years ago or so. And kids still did that. Cruising was still a thing here.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where I guess people digitally cruise now.
Right.
And so I guess there's no need for it. And it's Sunset Boulevard in West Hollywood still has anti-cruise. People still kind of cruise over there,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't cruise as much as they just kind of like rev their loud ass engines over and over and over again. Like they lease,
Right.
maybe they rent a Lamborghini for like the weekend and then act like they're rich, right? And then
Uh-huh.
just clogs up traffic. People just trying to be seen. I don't know if they think they're going to be discovered or they just want to be like, this is where the action is in West Hollywood or
Yeah, I
on
don't know.
Sunset. It's just the strangest. It's the strangest thing to me. It never like has appealed to me, like to do it, be like, let's go to West Hollywood, drive in a really fancy car we rent for the weekend and get discovered, or
Right.
have people
Discovered by
just
who?
exactly, or just have people think we're rich.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's
It
it's
must
pretty
be
funny.
some kind of a high for people. I'm sure it is all about, being strongly based in external validation. So,
Yeah,
and you as a person from listening to you for the last 6 or 7 years, you tend to be seeking more internal guidance and that sort of thing. So, I mean, even though you're a performer, which I know could say, oh, you want external validation, but it's not quite the same thing as just, hey, we're going to pretend to be this other person and hope somebody sees us.
yeah, it is. I mean, there is a real joy in acting, but to an end,
Mm-hmm.
for like an entertainment value, as opposed to like whatever is happening there. But yeah, okay,
Right.
so there's it's funny because the world changes in so many ways, but so many things stay the same.
Right.
And one of the things that stays the same, I think, for so many of us in the last, I don't know, you could say, gosh, are we going to say it's the last 50 years? I can't remember the exact year now, but of like the Patterson Gimlin film, but we're talking like Bigfoot and things like
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to evidence of, Oma, Sasquatch, Bigfoot, like we live in such a modern age, and yet there hasn't been like a definitive there. Picasso hasn't moved out of his blue period in the Bigfoot world into a different period yet. We seem
Right.
stuck in the same, to some large degree, we seem stuck in the same like original period, right?
Mm-hmm.
You feel like that's kind of where we're at still, and maybe we're headed to a new epoch soon?
I do feel like there's a major shift happening. I think, and everything I say just as a precursor, this is in my own personal experience, my own story. I really believe that as part of co-creation with source energy, that we all are our own universe to some degree. And then there's the layers of, so imagine an infinity symbol, right? And if you look at a torus, like a cross section of a torus, um, that is what our energy field and being looks like. And then each of those little rings, infinite numbers of us and other people. And then the part of what becomes co-creation is what we sort of through a process of scales and almost like an averaging of all that energy coming in, and we have these agreements with each other and we kind of agree on what reality is. But I feel like the shift that has happened over the last year, especially with the 12 what was it, 21 or 22 portal, the solstice, that period of time with the solar eclipse and the solstice conjunction was a particularly strong influx of multidimensional expansion. And what I felt for myself is that over the last year, I have gone from having to actively make an effort to expand out my energy field or to go within. But now I just sort of feel like I'm connected all the time. And I've taken to calling it the all, because it really does feel like everything. So getting back to Oma or Sasquatch or Bigfoot, I grew up in Northern California. So where I was, they often were, seemed to be in spaces where there were redwood trees. Redwood forests have their own special connection to each other
It's
and network of
amazing.
energy. It truly is.
I never really knew much about them until a cousin of mine who lives in Southern California got married up north a few years ago now, and my other cousin was, or the husband of my cousin, I guess my cousin, kind of. Anyway, he was performing the ceremony, and they got married in a ring of redwood trees. And so part of the ceremony was discussing this symbolism in the redwood trees, and how the majority of a redwood tree is underground in its roots. And even though we're in awe of their stature and how large they are above ground, even those the majority of that tree is it's like an iceberg. You don't see it.
Yeah, so I feel like whatever energy the organism of redwood forests, and not just redwood trees, there are other, forests that generate their own energy. But that organism in particular seems to allow them to come from where I think they are when we don't see them, which is I'm really on board with your friends who have been talking about this with you in the last few episodes, where I think that they are multidimensional beings. And I feel like they can blip in and out of our dimension where we can see them or have some sort of contact with them. And they can also blip out. And so they're still there. We just can't see them. I can't remember exactly what it was that made me have the arc thought.
Well,
I remember now.
Or before we move on to the arc thought.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's more exciting or more terrifying in some way. I mean, just because of my own, nervousness and fears and experiences.
Well, your experience was pretty intense.
Yeah,
so.
to think about that they could be there and you just don't even see them. Like, to me, that's wild, right? Like, so you're sitting around the campfire with an Oma and you don't even know it, right?
Right.
So obviously it shouldn't be terrifying, because because here's my question about that. If okay, the blipping in and out.
Hmm.
We can't see them when they're blipped out. Do you think they can see us when they're blipped out?
I am not really positive about that one. I feel like maybe they have an awareness that we're there, you know what I mean? But I don't know if they can or not. But I do feel like when they're not actively in our dimension where we can see them, that they're probably just doing their own Oma thing.
They're not so
And
obsessed with us as we are with ourselves.
probably they're probably not so up their own butts, right? So funny. I remembered after we started chatting and we talked about that a little bit. I remembered some of my experiences when I was pretty little in Northern California, and there were several times where I would be walking through the forest. And of course, I thought I was alone, but I know that my grandmother or somebody was, far enough away where they could still have an eye on me. But I thought I was in my own world in the forest at that point. And I would hear the knocking on the trees. One time I saw a large figure off in the distance, and it had, because I was immediately fascinated by Sasquatch, and it wasn't the lore and everything that was popular in the 70s. It was just like this feeling inside me, like, oh, that's a creature I want to connect with. I'm one of those weird people that came in through the veil of amnesia, and I forgot some details, but I managed to retain this sense, especially as a child, before some of the world and traumas and getting embodied and getting into the human experience got a hold of me. I just felt this knowing of everything. I remember being born. I remember coming in here, my mom having to come get me from the heaven school or wherever I was, it was my turn to come and be born because I didn't want to come. I thought this planet looked scary as F, and I just wanted to stay up there and have a good time with all the other little souls that were up there getting ready to transition back to Earth. But anyway, and I remembered, that moment. And so it was only as things kind of dampened that a little bit that I, maybe pulled away from that somewhat at different points in my life. But I had those experiences in the forest. And then as I started to hit puberty, visions, voices, seeing, I was always seeing sort of out of the corner of my eye. Like, it wasn't necessarily in my field of vision, but out of the corner of my eye, I would see fairies and those types of things. And then in middle school, which, we all know is like one of the rings of hell in Dante's Inferno, I'm pretty sure.
It's like the eternal liminal space of middle school.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, in middle school, like most kids, I started having a hard time and I got bullied a lot and whatnot. And I started seeing, with my own eyes, seeing these they were almost like mini Bigfoot. Like they're kind of like an Ewok, maybe, size. And there were, they would talk to me and they would hang out with me at first. It was just like at home. And, I would be upset or crying because of something that happened at school or whatever. And I would see them and they would do silly things and make me laugh and whatnot. And there were several of them. And they would just appear and then they would go. And then what started happening is they would go to school with me. And they were kind of like these little, it was almost like they were like my protectors. And, who knows, maybe all of this was just some adolescent concoction I made to deal with the circumstances of my life at the time. But they would, and so maybe it was my telekinesis or something that did these things. I don't know, but they would like if there was a kid that was a jerk and a real bully and was picking on me all the time, they would do something like, knock over the drink or trip them as they went walking by. And it wasn't me doing those things because I was like so passive. um, and then they hung around and they were there for a while. And then about age 14, 15, yeah, I think it was 15, because that's about when I started to like kind of figure out the whole social thing and the bullying thing and the teenage thing. And they said, well, you're doing okay, so it's time for us to go help someone else. But if you ever need us, just kind of give us the call, to the ethers. So that's kind of part of where I came up with this idea that they must be, maybe there's multidimensional layers on this whole planet. And then the arc idea came in when I was listening to you talking about Oma, and then I was thinking about all of the different people that I've connected with in the spiritual community. I, in particular, my galactic heritage that I believe is my origin story of before I was on this planet is tied to Mintaka, which is one of the planets in the Pleiades. And that is the channeling that started coming in for me last year. And as part of that process of getting that channeling and remembering and seeing the experience of this other planet and communing with other people, I just had one of those synchronistic things where I meet a bunch of other people and we all had this same sadness that people were saying, oh, it's the cosmic mother wound, it's the cosmic mother wound, or we got left here at Atlantis and so we're stuck and we're sad. But that never felt like the thing that I was homesick for or that I was sad about, that made me feel like this was not my home so much as I was growing up. But what came about is that there's a lot of us that are here, we're Mintakans, and something happened to that planet and we had to come here. And so a lot of other people who identify with being a starseed or whatnot, they feel like they have somewhere to go home to, but the Mintakans don't really have somewhere to go home to.
It's like refugees. This is where we set up shop now.
Mm-hmm. And so I kind of that's when this idea of Earth being an arc. Plus, I've been, I don't know about you, but there have been so many amazing discoveries lately, both through NASA and traditional scientific channels, and then also Uluru, and just so many things happening right now that I've been really paying attention to different planets. And it occurred to me how truly rare this blue ball is, and how if you look at the way our planet is, and then you look at like the rest other planets that we've been able to kind of assess in our galaxy, let's just start with the galaxy, not the universe, it's kind of unique here. Most other planets, it's like, it's an ice planet, it's a gas planet, it's a this planet, it's a water planet, but here we have everything. We have every possible kind of habitat. And so it seems like it would be an ideal place with the concepts of alien visitation and all of these other things, and Oma, that perhaps we're all from places that don't exist anymore. Maybe the Oma had a planet. Maybe there was an Oma planet and it didn't go so well. And whoever the Greys or whoever, we want to call them, maybe that's what they do, is they bring us here. Maybe we are the ark. And so that was kind of where I came up with that idea, is I was thinking about how there probably were many planets that became uninhabitable, and perhaps the people that were on them, either they were technologically advanced enough or the aliens were able to say, okay, well, here's the deal. If you want to go to this other place, we can take you there because your planet's not going to survive. So,
and for whatever reason, it's best that you don't remember.
yeah.
Maybe kind of this get you a fresh start. I'm curious if, I mean, first of all, there's lots of things like the whole idea of, hanging out in heaven school and your mom having to get you because you don't want to go. I mean, I'm surprised any of us incarnate. I
Really?
mean, I mean, I guess you spend an infinite amount of, time in heaven school or wherever it might be, right? These lives between lives. And you're like, okay, I've been here for a couple million years, time to go back or whatever it is, or there's no sense of time in that way. But it is interesting that any of us choose to incarnate. I mean, there must be something, there's obviously something compelling about doing it. In
There
the
is.
experiences we're having here, right?
Yeah. Well, in the quickening, that's kind of what I call it, this acceleration of shifting into the age of Aquarius and how things are expanding multidimensionally. Because as I've gone through periods of quickening in my own life, going back to Highlander, right? There can be only one, there can be only one, maybe ourselves and our energy, and that we're trying to take all of our fragmented multiverse selves and integrate them into a whole being.
That's interesting. Kind of like,
Yeah.
bringing the whole. I'm thinking of a slinky when it's very extended,
Yes.
and then you kind of compress it together. Yeah, and also this idea of the uniqueness of planet Earth, and the conditions are right for life of all kinds potentially. It makes me wonder about the evolution of energy as opposed to the physical evolution of creatures. And we discover all these different planets and think that they're lifeless, and it just makes me wonder, our idea of what makes life possible, the conditions that make life possible, are so specific to us.
Right.
What made our
Right.
life possible and the life of the other things on this? Because they're like, well, the whole universe is only made up of these so many what is it, compounds, and what is it, elements.
Elements.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, and we have discovered what makes possible the existence of life. And yeah, but maybe our definition of life is so narrow.
Right. I would agree with that. It's the way I look at it is kind of like whatever life forms may exist that we can't see or we're not aware of or don't understand. Perhaps like you're saying, there is an evolution of energy. And so there's different races or beings or whatever you want to call them, aliens, just because they're not from here, I guess. But for instance, that we're all sort of on a similar range of energetic frequency, so that this is almost like a zoo. They're like, oh, we're just going to keep you all here. We're like a little animal preserve of.
We're like a rescue.
Yeah.
We're the rescue. We're all the rescue dogs.
We're all the rescued dogs.
It makes, and the rescue dogs are overrunning the kennel, it seems,
To
a large degree. I just watched that David Attenborough documentary, Life on Our Planet. I think it came out a few years ago, where it's like he calls it his witness statement. And I wasn't aware of the history of Attenborough from the time that he's been traveling around since he was a young man, studying nature, and it's been his whole life. And he's 92 years old at the time of the filming, so he's 95 now.
Wow.
I don't think he's ever going to die. I don't think he ever will die, just because he'll be with us forever regardless, but even in his after form. But man, it's shocking to think about how we are overrunning the kennel in so many ways. But it's curious, if we're all brought here because it's a place where we can be, because something happened to our previous planets, and it just makes me wonder, are we doing the same to this planet, and then what next, right? Um,
Exactly.
and although there's time to turn it around,
Hmm.
and I believe we will, because we have no choice but to do so. And I was talking with some friends earlier this afternoon, and I was like, I wonder how much of everyone's general anxiety that gets fractured and filtered into so many different areas of personal relationships, political ideologies, and all these,
Hmm.
you name it, there's a million different things. How much of it stems from just this knowing of what we're doing to our habitat,
Hmm.
and our, for the most part, our inability to address it head on,
Hmm.
and to accept the fact that we are destroying our world and it won't be livable. Um, how
Yeah, I
much of
see
that
that.
is filtering into other, like, we're kind of lashing out, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. A bunch of kids acting out, and especially for people who maybe haven't expanded their mind a little bit, or, um, aren't thinking more multidimensionally, or, people who are very five senses. I think deep down they know this at some part. Even people who are denying climate change is a way of not, it's just a form of denial, and denying that knowing. And so then, well, I'm going to be mad about this other thing. I'm going to be mad because you pray to a different god, or I'm going to be mad because you're a different color, or I'm going to subjugate you because you're a weaker gender. Weaker.
Yeah, air quotes for
All
sure.
those, yeah, air quotes. All those kind of things, but here's my personal hope, and why I feel that there is enough of a critical mass of people who have connected to source, who are doing what would be called grid work. Oh, I forgot to even mention that I had like a really awesome experience with Jessica and Oscar, by the way. So
Oh,
Oscar says
okay.
hi.
Oh, that's amazing.
That was pretty intense, and that's part of what kind of, I don't know, it was like I had gone through that, like I'm saying, that amazing quickening this last year, along with a lot of people. Um, but there was still like this, there was just like this thing. It was like I had spilled some paint, and I knew there was a drop of paint somewhere, and I was stepping in it and tracking it all over the damn house, but I couldn't find the puddle of paint so that I could clean that up. And that's kind of what came out of the session, but I'm going off into the weeds. Um, Part of what I started doing was grid work last year, and a lot of hand movements and breathing, and musical notes and tones and things that had been present when I was a child, and that I just sort of instinctively done throughout my life. All of these dots got connected, and it became this thing that I started doing that I call Gaia balancing. A lot of people are also doing grid work in their own ways. Um, but what happened with that, as I practiced and practiced and practiced, you talked a long time ago, it's been a while now, maybe a few years, you had done a meditation, like a world meditation for the earth. And you had talked about having this experience where it felt like your head was the head, and then earth was your body, and you were the size of the planet, and you felt connected to everything. Do you remember that?
Hmm. Oh, wow, that's ringing a bell. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been quite a while ago, but when you started talking about that, I remember, like, because you talked about the feeling of like your limbs and hands and stuff like expanding and shrinking, and kind of feeling a little bit cartoonish as you were going through that process of feeling that. And that took me back to when I was a child, and it was, I would just do that. I didn't know I was doing it. I would go to sleep, that would happen. And around age 5 or so, I told my grandma about it, who was she was an Edgar Casey fan and all of that. So it's not, I was fortunate to grow up in that kind of an environment, but she actually did something so that I wouldn't just leave my body willy-nilly because I was doing it a lot. And at the time it wasn't safe, because I was a kid. But at any rate,
I just see your grandma being like, if you're going to be astral projecting, you need to be wearing your seatbelt.
Exactly.
Never leave your body. With most accidents of astral projection occur within a mile of the body.
Yeah, never let go of your golden cord. But once I put together the light codes, the light language, the movements, the musical thing, and the practice of doing this and expanding my energy field out, I got to a point where it felt like that. It feels like my energy field, the essence of me, is big enough to cover the whole planet. I become the size of the planet and send unconditional love to the earth, and then that comes back through me as well, and it creates a toroidal loop from source to me to earth and back again. So when I got to that point where I figured out, oh, this is happening, this is really exciting, I can actually feel this in my body and I can see it and I can put this into motion, I started practicing with it. And I'm adjacent to that big ass fire that we had here that was about 10 miles away from us. That was 100,000 acres, I think it wound up being. Anyway, so it was very smoky here, and I was having a hard time breathing. And so I started working with that energy and visualizing just pushing the smoke out of our valley, because we're kind of like in a valley, and then the stuff comes overhead, and so we get an inversion. And most of the time we have very clean air here, but if there is a fire or extremely cold weather, we'll get an inversion in the valley. And so I just focused on pushing it out so that it was far enough away so that I could breathe and get a break, and then maybe be able to do more work to try to help with the fire and what was happening, and make it a little easier for Earth and for us. And it worked. There was no reason for it to work. I would listen to the updates from the fire department and the land management team, and they were like, well, we don't exactly know how, but the smoke just kind of, nice clear day. Enjoy it, folks. May not last, but so when that worked, I got really excited, and then I continued doing it on a regular basis. And I was asking, so I kind of work with dragons a little bit too. Okay. Yeah. So there we go with that. Yeah. So I started asking the water dragon to bring us rain. And at the time that I was doing this and that I was asking for moisture to try to, help the situation, because it was affecting, it's not just about the people, it's the wildlife. And part of the reason I think the fire got so out of control had something to do with our internal fire that was going on as humans on this planet last year. So sure enough, there was rain. There was no rain expected for, I think they had said 42 days, something very biblical like that, where there's no way we're going to have rain. There's no moisture. There's no nothing. There's no rain. Don't even count on the rain. This fire is going to be burning till it snows, people. And I mean, it didn't put out the fire, but we did get rain. We got rain in the valley. We got rain across the area of the fire, and it gave the firefighters a break so that they could gain containment, and it gave the valley a break because it cleaned the air out and everything. But
Yeah, and it's
Um,
it's such an important aspect because it's, because rain has a lot more to do than just douse a fire. It's also
right,
adding moisture to the unyet burned,
exactly.
making it not so flammable, like
Killing some of the fuel.
yeah,
Yeah,
instantaneously making it just go up like in a blink of an eye.
yeah.
Um, so kind of what we're talking about here is, I mean, I don't want to say you're an airbender, but essentially we're getting into like airbending, and we're talking about elemental work.
And yeah, there would be that. I There's a lot more of me out there. I guess that's what I would say. I mean, I know you've talked with Becky and Vox, and she's doing this kind of work. There's a lot of us who are doing this grid work, and that's my point that I took a long, belabored time to get to, which is that I believe, and what I'm being told is that there are enough of us doing this now, and there's enough people that have just come in and had their minds cracked open, and they're starting to be aware of things and grow and kind of have the awakening that we can turn this around. And there are people who are continually focusing on different areas and helping to balance the magnetosphere. And there's a lot of, Schumann resonance uh, data that seems to confirm that this works.
What's
So,
interesting too is in all these years, I've never met or talked to anyone who said, I've come to realize that I'm not from this planet. And my purpose here on Earth is to be subjugating the other lesser life forms,
right.
and to cause destruction and chaos,
Mm-hmm.
and leave nothing but those in despair in my wake. And if I could just, maybe borrow some of your black ooze and just kind of suck your soul out, that'd be great. Because it turns out I'm a reptilian, or like
Right.
you never hear that message, and if people are hearing that message, I'd be interested to hear from what source, because I'm not hearing anything along these lines. Whenever I'm talking to people who have come into an understanding or an illumination of, being star seeds or origins from other places that are extraterrestrial, there's never a darkness to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's always a message of love. It's a message of hope. It's a message of rebirth, of cleansing, of unity, of community. So it's just something that struck me as you were
Mm-hmm.
talking
Mm-hmm.
about how there's more of you. And um, I guess if there is someone out there who's like, no, I'm a reptilian, and I just really want to kind of suck everyone dry, maybe they could send me an email, and I'd like to
Wouldn't
hear their
that be
side of this.
great?
I'd like
I
to
would
hear their
love to
side of the
hear that
story.
too. I have met a few people that I might suspect, but what seems like happens though, because I mean, even if we are a star seed or whether we're light beings or whatever we identify as, we're still in this avatar, and um, I have seen people be consumed by, I guess, I'm so careful right now with like polarity. You know what I mean? Like light and dark and good and bad. Because I really feel like the age of Aquarius and becoming more expanded multidimensionally means that we need to look at things in a more non-dual way. That doesn't, excuse horrible behavior or mean that people shouldn't be held accountable for that. Just that it does less harm to ourselves and the energy and vibration of the planet if we are thinking compassionately for our own selves, you know. But I have definitely seen people that have been overtaken by darkness. I've seen a few entities in my time. I have seen, I didn't actually, this is a crazy experience. I haven't told this story yet publicly, I don't think, but I haven't seen with my eyeballs a demon, but I have felt their presence and heard their activity. But my child saw the demon standing behind me. And then I immediately had, like, you know, a priest, a shaman, and a rabbi and a witch all come and bless the house. And
All at the same time?
not all at the same time.
Oh, that would have been
I'm
great.
being sarcastic. I know, right? That would have been
What are
great.
you doing here? What are
What
you
are you
doing
doing there?
Doctor?
Well,
Doctor?
I'm here for
Doctor?
an exorcism. I don't,
Doctor?
yeah.
Doctor? It just reminds me of that. What is that movie?
So funny. Yeah.
I'm
But
curious
at
about
any
what was
rate,
going on in that situation. If you can elaborate on that at all, like during this moment where this happened.
Well, both of my kids had been like kind of having bad dreams. They were little. They were, let's see, let me think. How old were they when this started happening? It is 2021, 2010. So yeah, they were 7 and 5 when these things started happening. But I thought they were having nightmares. I thought they were having bad dreams. But um, in this particular case, what started happening is especially my younger child, they would say, they would be like frozen in fright. And I started to get the idea, because we'd had other paranormal things happen in this house before. We had a little boy ghost that lived here when we moved in, totally harmless. He was actually my son's imaginary friend for a while until I figured out that it was actually a presence. But they were both like seeing this and feeling it and being afraid of it, and I wasn't seeing it, but I would hear, you know, knocking on the windows, and we would have some of those paranormal kind of weird things happen. And so this one particular incident, and then in the meantime, their father, who is no longer my husband now, but he was at the time, he also started acting horrible, like, who are you? And felt like a different person. And he never actually saw this presence, but he did feel it, and it was part of what sent him back to church. Actually, for the first time in his life, he was an atheist when we got married. But that experience was so profound and terrifying for him. He went back to church, and unfortunately, the church he picked was a very misogynistic, rigid type of church. So that
Unlike the Promise Keeper vibe.
Yeah. So, but at any rate, so what happened is, and it was actually in this room, I'm kind of getting cold thinking about it or talking about it, because I haven't really talked about it in a long time. She was standing, and I had knelt down because I was tying a shoe or doing something like that. I don't remember exactly what. And she said, because over the time that this had been going on, it was a few months of these incidents happening. And when they would be scared, I would be like, so can you see this? What are you seeing? And I would just ask questions, because I didn't want to lead them into any particular answers. She suddenly looked really scared, and she said, "Mommy, the big blue monster is here." And I got like this, you get those chills in your body, probably similar to your Bigfoot fear. And I said, and I'm trying to be chill because I don't want to scare her. I want her to have the illusion that I'm not scared shitless.
I'm the parent. I am the protector.
Yeah, I'm the parent. I'm fine. I'm the protector. I'm not terrified that they're. She said, he's standing behind you. And oh my gosh, it was just like a horror movie, And so I held her, and then I did what my grandma always taught me growing up, because even though we were, into all the paranormal stuff, she had actually studied to be a nun. She was a novitiate. And so we were sort of like those holiday, we're mad at the church about Mary Magdalene Catholics. And so, but there is something, and I know you've talked to a lot of, demonologists, demon hunters, that kind of thing. And so this isn't surprising to you, but so I just called on Jesus and said, you have to leave. You don't have permission to stay here. You don't get to be here. And then once we went through the process, that was the moment that I went, okay, it's no longer slamming doors and my kids having some nightmares. Now I feel like I'm going to pass out.
Oh, wow.
So that's when I had the I actually went to the Unitarian church, the Unity Church here in town, because they kind of embraced everything. And I knew that the pastor there would know someone who could come in and do a clearing on the house. And so I did have someone come in, and we went around the whole house with her. She said that we had a vortex in the bottom floor of the house, and we closed that. And then saged, and since that day I have crystals in every window of the house, and rocks in the four corners of the property, and everything is secured, and I haven't had any more problems. But it was interesting, because it was about maybe a month after that. I don't remember exactly what happened, but my daughter or my son came in, and they said, and my daughter was my daughter at the time, but now my daughter is my son also. So I have two boys now. But
okay.
At the time, he was presenting as a girl, and he got a scared look on his face. And I said, "What's the matter, honey?" And the blue monster's outside, and he's really mad because he can't get in.
That's great. I love this. This brings me great joy.
I'm glad it brings you great joy.
It brings me great joy that this blue monster is just like, I don't get to do my thing.
Exactly.
Yeah, like there's as unknown and strange and as paranormal all these things are, the idea that there's guidelines.
Mm-hmm. There's
rules,
definitely some rules,
boundaries.
It seems like.
Yeah, that's the fascinating thing, right? That that there are things that they must abide. And
yeah,
and I'll tell you, if I start smelling sulfur, if I'm somewhere and I start smelling sulfur, or I feel like there's a demon presence like in my immediate vicinity, I will not hesitate to drop some JC.
absolutely.
Right? Like,
yeah.
I will not hesitate at all.
Jesus is a master, is a presence. And just because it got, he got wrapped up in all of the whole religion doesn't mean that that's necessarily, what he had in mind. I mean, in my personal opinion, I think he was probably like, oh man, you guys really, this is what you're going to do?
Yeah.
In my name. I just came there to teach you all to love each other, damn it.
Yeah, a friend of mine just sent me, my friend Angela just sent me a shirt that's got Jesus on it. Just says, I didn't mean that. Shit, man.
I love that. That's
yeah,
great.
It's a pretty cool shirt. Okay, so it's like, with this experience with your two sons and the blue monster being stuck outside, and and then it's like now you're doing grid work years later. I mean, obviously you were in tune, and like the family's in tune, and there's like the energy of the house already having something in it when you moved in, maybe like the vortex you were talking about.
Yeah.
It's it's interesting. Like I don't know I don't know where you live specifically, or like I'm fascinated by ley lines, but then like sometimes I have an easy time and sometimes I have a very difficult time trying to even find out information on ley lines about where they are, like these energetic lines that uh, are around the earth, according to some people. And it is interesting, like because I think when I hear grid, right, when you're talking about doing grid work, some people listening might be wondering like, oh, you mean like you're making a grid of some kind, or like I'm thinking, ley lines come up in my brain. Crystal grids are are great visuals as well for, if people just want to Google that crystal grid images, I think they can see what I'm talking about. But can you explain like the grid, like what do you mean by that
What do
specifically?
I mean by grid work? Well, I mean, like all of this, part of how I look at the metaphysical, the paranormal, the things that we don't necessarily understand fully and just have a knowing about is that um, it's all like music, right? And so there's a multitude of genre and types of music. It's not like we made music and there's all these instruments and they said, okay, we made music. Now we're going to sing and play this one song forever. And everybody has to like this one, and that's all you get. So for all of this type of intuitive and metaphysical paranormal stuff, I feel like it's a bit like that, where there's like governing laws, like you're talking about, or rules, but there are there's the structure of music, but then there's a million different ways to play it, right? So for me, grid work is points on the globe and in the magnetosphere that hold together the tensegrity of the energy field of Earth herself. Because part of what I think is happening is she's evolving, she's growing, she is raising her vibration. And we're supposed to be doing that together with her. It's supposed to be this unconditional love and gratitude that we give to our mother Gaia, and then she gives to us. And as part of doing that, because for me it's very simple. Like a lot of people get very complicated with it, and they look at all the different ley lines and magnetospheres and ranges. I'm pretty sure that Becky sent you the zone of safety.
Oh yeah, I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, that video.
Is that guy called the Valley of the Sun or something?
Yeah.
I'm trying
so
I have to relook in that, because I'm
I
just setting
live
my Zillow parameters to that.
Yeah. Well, I live in Grand Junction, Colorado. So part of what I realized when you were talking with your friend about scalar energy and Tesla, which Tesla has been also another obsession since I was a child, I knew he was onto something. And perhaps as more and more people are able to be sensitive to feeling that, we will be able to put it into use somehow and get us out of this environmental downward spiral. But so where I am, it's 5,000 feet. It is definitely an energy center. It's a point on the grid. And it is very interesting that I wound up here. Colorado is another one of the things that, even though I was growing up in Northern California, for some reason, I was just always drawn to Colorado. I had sinks of Colorado over and over again. Like I would go read a romance novel. Don't judge me. I was like 11.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with a romance novel.
Yeah. but I would pick out a book and it would take place in Colorado, and just Colorado. And then when I was about 10, I wound up living on Colorado Avenue. So I wound up here for a reason, and I knew this was where I was supposed to be. And I think part of that is because the elevation helps to connect to that energy somewhat, because you are closer to the layer of source energy that surrounds the earth that you're trying to connect with. But grid work is just about focusing on your point where you're at, and giving and receiving healing in that process. And so everybody does it in a different way. There are a lot of groups that are, connecting in various ways, like that world meditation that you had talked about. And Becky's actually, with some other folks, we're doing a meditation over the next course of the week for the magnetosphere and trying to stabilize that, because, the poles are trying to flip. And so there's a lot that is happening as the planet is sort of going through its own puberty, if you want to think about it that way, its own growing, where people who are able to pull in that source energy and send it to Gaia and take it back and be a conduit, can soften that, can ease the transition. If you think about it, it's kind of like Earth's our mother, right? And she has a cold. And if your human mother had a cold, if you had a good relationship and you were such a person, you would, take her medicine and take her some soup and take care of her and kind of give her that loving attention until she felt better. So sending that unconditional love and that source energy and that intention to right things that are out of balance on the planet helps ease the growth process. It makes it less violent. The last thing I'll throw at you about that is this, and maybe it'll help illustrate it a little. I've had visions and dreams, and know quite often what's happening with different timelines. And it's not necessarily like, oh, I know this thing's going to happen. It's more like I can see a whole lot of different potentials, like what the most likely potentials are, because at any given point, there's an infinite number of potentials. But based on how groups of people are co-creating together, there kind of narrows down to maybe 3 or 4 most likely possibilities. So when I see those kinds of things, I didn't used to understand what that meant. Like, for instance, I dreamt about 9/11 before 9/11, right? And I didn't understand the dream. I thought it was going to be an earthquake in California. But then when it happened, I knew that that's what I had seen. And then I spent like about a month chain smoking and drinking every night after work while I watched Fox News, of all things, asking, why? Why do you tell me these things? What effing good does it do me to know? Because who was I going to call? What am I supposed to do about it? And so it's taken me a process from then to now to come to understand that the reason I see things sometimes is to work with the collective energy to try to direct things to their highest good. And it's almost like, so like, for instance, the timeline where COVID turns us all into zombies. I immediately start focusing on the desired outcome, not the one I don't want to see. So, all right. In the summer, I started having visions of a lot of civil unrest, um, bombings, uh, volcanic eruptions, and severe winter, like to the point where there was so much snow that places were cut off. Like somewhere like here, that's kind of in between Salt Lake and Denver, everything is trucked and flown in, and it's a valley, and we're one of the largest places in between those two major cities. So if there was enough snow that or something happened that the highways were cut off, we would just be stuck with whatever we happen to have here for a while, you know. Um, so uh, I've been starting to write these things down or send them to different people because I want confirmation later so that I don't feel crazy. But I'd actually sent just a real quick note to Jessa Reed on Patreon about that I was seeing, and this was in, I think, October, maybe. I sent that to her in November. But I told her this is kind of what I've been seeing, but I am working for that not to happen, and focusing on the highest outcome for everyone, and trying to kind of put out that fire, for lack of a better word. I knew that the volcanoes and all of these different earth circumstances, like all of those processes are necessary right now. It's part of her trying to heal herself, but it also doesn't have to be like, a big violent thing either. So let's see. So then Christmas, bombing, volcano, like a few days later, and we're having the polar vortex, and we had the siege on the Capitol, right? Well, the visions that I saw of those things were much bigger than they actually turned out to be. And so, what I believe happens with this grid work is that we are focusing our intention on the best outcome of these things. And so it kind of, like, if you notice the bombing
turns the volume down.
Yeah, it turns the volume down. It just turns the temperature down a little, turns down the dial so that we have lava flow instead of Hawaii covered in lava. Or we have a bombing, but nobody except the guy actually gets hurt, really. We have the thing at the Capitol, but it just kind of fizzles out and they all look stupid after. We have there's something else. Oh, well, the winter thing, like the polar vortex is passing through and it's doing some stuff, but it's not nearly what it could have been. And so, call me crazy, but I really do believe that those of us who are, I know you have that smile on your face because you're like, would I ever call anyone crazy?
Yeah, right.
But I really believe that because at this point, with the people I've connected with over the last year, half the time I feel like I'm having a meeting with them all the time in my head, because I'm just sort of connected to different people, and I'll think of them, and then either we'll wind up messaging each other immediately, or someone will call or something will come through. So I know that there's a lot of us that are all getting these kinds of little whispers of, hey, this is a thing that could happen, and so maybe you should be thinking about it going better.
Well, that's really cool to hear about. It's like, back in the day, we'd just say you're all light workers, right?
Right.
Trying to, bring more light into the world. And there are people, and there's this great book called The Prophet's Way, written by Tom Hartman. And there's, oh my gosh, I read it last year, but so it's a little hazy, but there's talk about needing people to essentially do exactly what you're talking about, and how there was like a connected, I don't want to say tribe, but I guess it kind of was, of people around the earth who know how powerful this is. and that they've been trying their damnedest for a really long time to make sure we don't drive this car off the road.
Mm-hmm.
And it was becoming more and more difficult for them to do that. But what it sounds like now is happening is that more and more people are waking up to joining this tribe of people, and these people who are focusing on making sure that we do just that, that we keep on the straight and narrow there, and keep balance,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um,
Yeah.
so, I mean, that's great to hear. And, you know, and one of my biggest qualms with whenever like a public tragedy happens is when people start lashing out about thoughts and prayers, and like
Right.
really start shitting on thoughts and prayers when there's literally nothing else millions of people can do in
Mm-hmm.
certain situations other than send thoughts and prayers to people and
Right.
to situations. And underestimating the power of such things is, I think, detrimental to all of us in the long run. But I
Mm-hmm.
understand that offering thoughts and prayers in the place of something else tangible that you can offer, when in a position to do so, can be looked at as a slap in the face.
Right.
For sure, I understand that as
Right.
well. Um, well, this is really cool. Like, I, I'm glad to hear that there's a network of people doing this while the rest of us
Mhm.
sleep, uh, comfortably in our beds after binging True Detective season 3 and having nightmares and wondering why, after filling ourselves with so much darkness. There are those working, on the light, and so that's great to hear. So thank you for doing that.
Well, you're welcome, but you're doing it too. You may not think you are, but you are. And that doesn't mean that I'm not, making cookies a food group of my diet and binging podcasts. I part of what I found, and that's another point about how I feel like a critical mass and quickening has happened since that conjunction. I kind of went on like a 6, 7 week um, crazy journey sabbatical. I had a whole bunch of a tornado of things I was adjacent to, like, trouble with my romantic relationship, my kids having difficulties. My mother we got her dementia diagnosis. And so there was just all this like chaos spinning around me. Right. And then at the same time, so I was doing some really deep grieving. And then at the same time, all of a sudden the world felt so loud. Like
Can
it
you
was
remind
like,
us when the conjunction was? Because people might be listening
oh, right,
and
right, right.
wondering,
I'm
like, oh,
sorry.
when was this? Because
Yeah, that was in December. It
Mhm.
was December 21st or 22nd on the solstice. I can't remember the exact date
Oh,
off the
that's
top
right.
of my
Because I
head.
just had an Instagram post pulled down today of
Oh,
me taking a photo of it.
are you
They said it
serious?
violated community guidelines. I don't know, because it was
What
December.
the
Let me look
fuck?
at this real quick because
That is crazy.
it's so weird. Like, I think the
Why would they
caption,
take down pictures of a planet?
and I think all
What
I
the-
said in the caption was something along the lines of, people may make fun of you for posting a photo of the moon, but it doesn't matter how blurry it is. You post when you can take a picture of her, you post it. It was
Mhm.
like, I think it was something like that. And
That's so funny.
yeah,
Huh.
but yeah, the
Maybe someone
notifications.
accidentally reported you or something.
Yeah, who
Because I
knows?
know
The
sometimes that can
notification's not
happen.
there anymore. But I just thought it was interesting. I was like, wait,
That is
are they
really
trying to
weird.
are they trying to silence us about the
I,
eclipse? Like,
right. Or do they think like somehow now the planets or the other group we're not allowed to
yeah.
talk about? Um, uh,
Okay, so the conjunction. So
wow.
right around the
Okay, so the
conjunctions and all this
conjunction.
happens.
So it took me until today to realize because, as part of coming into the world, just sort of having so much traffic in my head, if I allowed it, I had to learn how to quiet and control that connection, the ESP, the psychic thing, the whatever you want to call it, telepathy. Because when I was a little kid, my BFF and I were still friends. She was the first person that I ever met who thought she was from the stars too, and didn't think I was crazy. And so we would talk about all that stuff, and we would practice Reiki on each other. We didn't know what the hell we were doing. We were just kind of
But
going by
intuitively you
instinct.
knew it.
Yeah, intuitively we knew it. And one of the things we would do is we would walk, because when you're a kid, you walked everywhere. Back when kids got to be kids. Yeah. Free range children.
Oh yeah, I was like totally free range.
Yeah.
Cage free.
Yeah. So we would walk down the street and we would be able to hear everybody in the houses and hear what they were talking about. And so we would, and maybe that was part of it. Maybe that's why we met, is because we knew we needed to work on this stuff, but we would practice not hearing them. Like we would practice how to control that and to be able to hear them or not hear them. So I've spent a good portion of my life learning how to control that so that I could just function in the world, because otherwise it's kind of like Whoopi Goldberg and Ghost, where you just have all this stuff yelling at you all the time. Well, but I always had the connection open to whatever the network is that all of us on Earth who can plug into it communicate with each other without email or any of that. So what I just figured out in the last few days is that it wasn't, because I was trying to figure out, okay, I'm not watching the news. I'm not paying attention to any of this stuff. What is so loud all of a sudden? Why do I feel so overwhelmed? And it took me a while to figure it out, I guess. But what I figured out this week and today in particular, I thought, son of a bitch, you know what? A whole bunch of people woke up and came online. So there's a whole lot of cosmic internet traffic that wasn't there.
There was an influx in the chat room. The chat room just filled up.
Exactly. And so I think I had to take that time to just kind of be quiet and turn down the volume on everything and recalibrate so that I could, not feel like a million new voices were shouting at me.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, because whenever there's an influx like that, there's a lot of, like what is it, not to compare this to a baseball card trading group I'm in on Facebook, but you always
I know how much you love the cards.
Yeah, but you always know when there's a new person in the group because they'll post a very new person question.
Right.
Right. And then
exactly.
Some of the older, more jaded people will be like new here.
Yeah.
And they're over it, right? And it's
right.
They're new. Like you don't have to treat them in this way because they're just
they're just new.
Where you previously were on your journey. But but some people can be a little, but then other people are obviously more in tune to understanding. Oh, welcome. This is great. This is what you need to know moving forward. We can help you as much as we can, but we don't have all the answers.
Right.
Well, Andrea, this has been great.
It has been great. Thank you so much.
This has been fun.
I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Let's talk. It's at Grooving Goddess on Instagram.
Yes, and also Facebook.
And through this, I'm trying to bring it up now. You have an intuitive menu where people can, I love the name of that, where people can book appointments with you, correct?
Yes. You can go to my Instagram and get to my Square booking site. And you'll see my menu of services. I do various kinds of card readings. The latest thing that I really got into was the Syncretic Oracle. I bought the Galactic Trading Oracle deck. Have you seen that one before?
No, I haven't.
I'll send you some pictures and send you the link to their site. It's an amazing deck. It combines pretty much every modality. There's I Ching, there's Mayan glyphs, there's so many different things. And my cat wants dinner, so he's starting to try to open the door. I can hear. He's a mini panther. I'll send you a picture of him too. But at any rate, I do card readings. I help with trauma healing and release, animal communication. That's something that I have up there. I'm your one-stop shop for all your intuitive needs.
Excellent.
And I'm always running specials, and I like to do things like drawings for free readings for my followers and whatnot. But I really just want to connect with people. And one of the things I do, more than hiring me to read for you or anything else, if you feel at all frustrated with meditating, but you want to connect with source, if you want to expand your unconditional love, if you want to help with this Gaia balancing, I will reshare it. So it's at the top of my feed, but the love expansion exercise that I created, the music, the dance, the whole thing, I think it can really help people who struggle with meditation. And I don't, all I would love is if people just focused on bringing in that unconditional love and feeling it and giving it to the earth and receiving it back, because it is a profound experience. And if more people were filled with that sort of unconditional love for each other, there wouldn't be so much turmoil and there wouldn't be so much human suffering. Don't even get me started on Nigeria. Oh, before I go, I do have another podcast. It's more of a socio-political, non-woo kind of thing. But it's, the name of it is Call Me Karen. With an obnoxious spelling of Karen.
I'll have to tell my mom. My mom's named Karen, and she's just up in arms over the loss of her name. I'll have to tell her to listen to it.
Well, I was like, okay, well, you're probably in the zone where if you were a different kind of person, you could probably be Karen if you wanted to. So this is actually my subterfuge to try to reach some of the more conservative, closed-minded people that I know through other travels in my life by accidentally opening their mind to racism and sexual assault and elder care and all those types of things. So you can also check me out there. So that is me.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people want to get into meditation and really struggle with it, and so definitely reshare that so we can put that out there.
I will, because I know for me, it puts me in a different kind of zone, and I feel so fantastic afterwards. And I've had a lot of, physical body healing since I started doing it. So
cool.
I really believe in it.
Well, this has been wonderful, and we'll have to check in on the future and see how things are going. And then, hopefully there won't be any, bad dreams about the city of Los Angeles anytime soon in your mind. And if so,
I think you're safe for a while, and I will message you if I hear anything.
Okay.
Thanks, Ryan.
Maybe it's time for a road trip, and I'll be like, message received.
Cool. I will do that.
Well, this has been great.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Talk to you next time. Bye, Ryan.
Bye.